How's the weather out there, Fred?
Beautiful.
I want to thank everybody today for joining us. Hopefully we can all learn a little bit more about the property tax appeal process. Just a little background, I've been doing tax appeals for about 25 years. So I probably have done 200 plus. I don't say that to impress you, I say it to impress upon you. The more you do of something, the better you get at it. So it's just another venue of trying to get more listings and helping the community. So with that being said, our brand line is we will always work to exceed your expectations. And we believe in that line. And today I'd like to work with everyone that has taken their time out of their schedule to help them possibly exceed their expectations today. Okay. And then I always use a few quotes. That's just who I am. Who aspires to lead, learn, and teach today, more than likely will go on to inspire others to lead, learn, and teach tomorrow. And as everybody knows, time is a precious commodity, right? We only get 24 hours a day, or 1,440 minutes per day, and breaking down to its smallest form, 86,400 seconds to finish what we start. I use our time as productively as possible. And before we get into this tax, does anybody here?
No, on a Zoom meeting. Yeah, I'm on a meeting.
Just kidding. I don't need that. Does anybody know what's the major difference between producers and those who don't produce?
Teachers.
Producers never use excuses. Non-producers seem that they can't stop using it. And that makes the difference. When we point a finger at someone, we always have three coming back to ourselves. So I'm a firm believer in accountability. So the topics of discussion today is, what is New Jersey's real property tax? The secrets to a successful tax appeal, simple math calculations, 8 easy steps to the tax appeal process, comparable sales you should and shouldn't use, and helpful links. And if anybody has any questions during this process, because it will get confusing, that I can guarantee you, but it's not as confusing as it may appear. In New Jersey, Jersey's real property tax is, there's a Latin term ad valorem, means, it's Latin that means according to value. That our property taxes should in essence be based on what the real value is. Unfortunately, you get one tax assessor, maybe two assistants, responsible for telling everybody what their real value is. Because of that, the state of New Jersey allows all its towns, cities, municipalities to be within 15% of a property's true value. That's either high or low. That is called the director's ratio. That's a very important term, as you'll see as we move forward. It's the actual 100% assessed value or taxable value of real property.
Hey, how are you?
Nice. All right, New Jersey's real property tax. What is it? We have what's called an equalization ratio. By a show of hands, can you see how many people raise their hands? How many people know what an equalization ratio is? Very good.
I think I did.
Okay. It's a ratio of total assessed value for properties in a community to the property's true market value. The number represents the state or locality's judgment, like how closely assessed values match the true market value. How do they do that? So, for instance, the next tax appeal season is going to be April 1st, 2023. So this exercise is based on preparing for those who want to appeal the taxes in 2023. And what they do is they'll take everything that's sold, the actual contract price, and then they'll take those same properties and take the aggregate of the assessed value, and they divide those numbers into one another. That's how they come up with an equalization ratio. Every municipality in New Jersey has a different equalization ratio, and that equalization ratio changes every year. What's the general tax rate? Well, that's how we decide what our property taxes are. And the way that you determine what one's property tax is, you take the assessed value, you divide that number by 100, and then you multiply it times whatever that town's tax rate is. And that will give you your annual property taxes. So if anybody has any questions, because I'm going, oh, yes.
Fred has his hand up. So Fred, if you wanted to share and unmute yourself.
Hello, Fred. You had a question?
There he is.
No, I raised my hand when you asked if anybody knew it about the equalization rate.
Okay. Very good, Fred. Okay. So what are some of the secrets to a successful tax appeal? Real estate values, as you know, are constantly fluctuating up or down over the past, 8-9 years. They've kind of been going one way and that's up, in an upward trend. So generally speaking, when home prices rise, so do our property taxes, which are tied to a home's true value. And conversely, when home prices decline, so do our property taxes. Or do they? Not really, because tax budgets are based on the municipality's budget, whether it be education, law enforcement, whatever that is. The assessed value for all intents and purposes remains constant unless a municipality does a revaluation. And once they do that reevaluation, they usually will bring it up to 100% of value. So right now in Wayne, I believe the equalization ratio is 48.18%. So simple mathematics, if you took 100,000 and you divided it by the equalization ratio of 48.18, it's going to come up to, I don't know, like 112,500. So as the equalization ratio drops, the 100% of value increases. When the equalization ratio rises, the 100% of value comes down. Like what you just did. Okay. Every homeowner, before considering a property tax appeal, should examine their property tax card, which you can get from your local municipality. Why do we want to do that? Well, I've looked at many property cards that had someone with an in-ground pool, when in essence, that in-ground pool was removed quite some time ago. So they're being taxed on an in-ground pool they no longer have. That's why a homeowner always wants to make sure that the information on the property tax card is accurate. In this case, they said, well, geez, I've been paying taxes on a pool that hasn't been there for the past 10 years. You can't go back to the town and say, hey, my pool was removed 10 years ago, I'm compensated. That's not going to happen.
We had a pool in our house in West Milford and took it out. When they put the pool in, the taxes went up 2,000. When we took it out, my mother got $20 back. $20.
You see how fair everything is?
So what's the Wayne, like, how much of a difference it makes in a pool? I guess it depends on how big is the pool. I just want to know, people ask about too much that I have no idea.
Well,
how
an
much-
in-ground
what's the
pool is a
percentage?
permanent fixture,
Yeah.
right? So if it's permanent, then it's taxable.
Okay, yes,
Whereas an above-ground pool
It's not.
is not,
yes,
right?
that's
So
insurance.
that varies from municipality to municipality, and they grade properties differently.
Yeah,
So if you have a luxury home with a pool, you're
Yeah.
probably gonna be paying more tax than a Cape Cod on a 50 by 100 with a pool,
okay,
okay?
it's not luxury. Okay,
And the same is if a homeowner checks their property card and they did have an in-ground pool, but it's not showing up on the property card.
Okay.
The town can't come back to them and say, well, you've had this pool for 10 years not paying taxes. It's when they find out. So it works both ways. But that's why it's incumbent on property owners to make sure before they do a property tax appeal that the information on the property card is accurate, because more than likely, the assessor may want to come in and do an inspection. Okay? There are times when a tax assessor makes the owner an offer without having to appear in front of the county tax board. And the only time that they do that is when you presented them with a really ironclad case. You gotta remember, and I have a lot of fun in doing this. I can do them relatively quickly now because I've been doing them for so long. But you're almost like an attorney presenting your case. So if you're gonna help someone with a property tax appeal, you have to look at all the data, not just cherry pick data, because the assessor is gonna try to find data that's gonna kind of give them the upper hand. So if you really do your homework, you check all the data. I mean, Mike can attest to it. He's been on a few appeals with me, and we pretty much are running at like a 99.9% success rate. But we'll also tell the homeowner if we don't think that it's doable. And they appreciate the honesty.
You, I thought you kill them after you close it, because you already have all the paperwork and everything, right? Or normally, or after.
Well, here's the good news. In New Jersey, what they call spot assessments are illegal. So if you had someone that bought a house for 900,000,
Yes,
but the assessed value was only 700,000,
okay,
they cannot raise your taxes. In New Jersey, that's illegal.
okay,
Conversely, if you bought a house for 900,000, right? But that house they had assessed at $1.2 million, you can actually, if it was an arm's length transaction, go into the local assessor and say, hey, you guys had me, my taxable assessment way up here. Here's what I just purchased my home. And I know Wayne's pretty good about it, and they'll actually give you a reduction without going through a formal appeal. At least I've been successful with that. Any questions so far? I know it's really confusing, especially when it gets into numbers. So when you're doing a tax appeal and you're finding comparable properties, you want to use the apples to apples approach. You don't want to take a Colonial and compare it to a Cape Cod. Otherwise, the assessor is going to laugh at you. Believe me, I tried it.
it is the same as market value, so you kind of pick the sections and the range to range, colonial to colonial, but section to
That's
section all at the
correct.
same time.
But the only difference with a tax appeal is you can only use comparable sales from a certain date to a certain date, which we're going to get into later. And just because your neighbor, you find out your neighbor's paying $3,000 less in taxes than you are, that doesn't constitute that the tax assessor is going to say, okay, Bill's only paying, he's paying $3,000 less than you are, so we're going to reduce your assessment. It doesn't work that way. So when you find comparables that you're going to use in the tax appeal, you want to try to be within 200 to 500 square feet of whatever comparables that you're using. Preferably, you want to get 5 good ones. You can get away with 3, but really to deliver a stronger case, try to get the 5 sales. And only arm's length transactions can be used. No bank foreclosures, no divorces, none of that stuff they're going to allow. So it has to be what constitutes an arm's length transaction. An overvalued or oversized property is one of the most common and successful grounds. Is that for me? For challenging your property tax assessment and winning the appeal. The NTU, the National Taxpayer Union, says anywhere between 30 to 60% of all property homeowners in the United States are overtaxed. You don't think they'd be undertaxed, do you? No. Yet only 5% ever go to appeal their property tax. I know, I appealed mine personally, so I know what my neighbors are paying. And they get really, really ticked off at me when I tell them what I'm paying. I said, I told you, should have did an appeal when I did, but they didn't listen. I will tell you, April 1st, 2023 will be when the tax appeal deadline is going to be used. I personally think it's going to be next to impossible for anyone to do a tax appeal this year, just because values are nuts. But take the time now to learn it, because I will tell you that the majority of people I've helped with this process, every time they go to sell the house, they'll call me up and say, we really appreciate what you did for us. So neighborhood property assessments that are lower than the subject is not a valid reason for a tax appeal. Right? What's a valid reason for a tax appeal?
Being overtaxed.
Very good, Mike. The comparable properties that you're using within that specified time frame. Okay, here comes the fun part. These are the calculations for the tax. Everybody ready? Okay. How do you figure out 100% of the home's value? Anybody know what the formula is?
It's divided by the equalization rate,
You take
is that right?
the assessed value divided by the equalization ratio,
48 point.
and that gives you the true 100% of value. Right? So it's assessed value divided by the equalization ratio gives you the 100% assessed value.
I just pull out your cheat sheet every time I have to figure.
I need that cheat sheet.
That's
copy.
good.
So in this case,
Good at finding that cheat sheet, so where do you put it down?
in this case, we're gonna take a home that's their assessed value is 350,500. We're gonna take Wayne's equalization ratio, which is 48.18%. And we're going to determine what the 100% of value is. So it's 350,000 divided by 48.18%, or 727,500 is now the 100% of value. So in New Jersey, they have what's called a director's ratio. I spoke about that earlier, which the director's ratio allows them to be 15% above or 15% below before they have to readjust or lower your property tax assessment. So in this case, the 100% of assessed value, we take the 727.5 times the New Jersey director's ratio, which is 15%. So the formula is 100% assessed value, 727,500 times the director's ratio, which will be 85%. That means that we now have to find comparable closed properties that are less than 618,375 if we want to have a successful tax. That's the formula. Anybody have any questions on that so far? Want to go through it one more time?
I
Yes.
kind of know the answer, but, so where do you get the equalization rate and when do you get it?
Oh, I'm going to show you on the next slide.
Okay, good.
Got it?
Yeah.
Okay. These go by county. The state of New Jersey, and there's going to be links at the end of the presentation that you can find all this stuff. But this is all of Passaic County. So if you look down at Wayne, the equalization ratio is 48.18%, right there. And if you look in column 3 is the aggregate true value of real property.
What does determine the equalization rate?
What's that?
How do they pick the equalization rate?
Oh, that's what we're gonna tell you right now. Good question.
Boy, Pat Lowe group's all over this thing, I'll tell you that right now.
So they take the aggregate true value of real property that sold in that prior year. They add that up. In this case, it was 10,913,781,372. Then they take the aggregate in column 1 of the assessed valuation of all those properties that sold. And they came out to 5,256,255,200. So they took the aggregate of the assessed value divided by the aggregate true value, and that came out to 48.18%.
I gotta go meet the doctor.
Okay,
So it might
so
change
they do this
year.
every year, every year. I think
What month?
it comes out in July.
Yeah, so it's July, August. Yeah.
So has everybody got a kind of an understanding of that? That's every year, so these equalization ratios all over the state change based on the aggregate true value and the aggregate assessed value of all those homes that sold in the prior year. Okay. So anybody know the tax rate in Wayne?
5 point something.
Very good, 5.648. So how do you make the calculations for the tax rate? Well, the tax rate on this home is 5.648 per 100 of assessed value, and the equalization ratio is 48.18% in the Wayne. So the total assessed value is 350,500. We're going to determine what the property's property taxes are. We take the 350,500, we divide by 100, which is 3,505, times the tax rate, which is different in every town. So the annual property taxes for this particular property are 19,796.24. Come on, you're in New Jersey. That's not
It's a
a lot.
720 house now.
What's that?
It's not a 350 assessment, it's, but the value is 720.
But that's the total assessment.
Yeah.
That's without price. So for the property taxes, we were determining what the actual property tax would be for that house based on
Oh,
that
assessed
assessment.
value and.
Yeah.
Okay.
I keep getting them confused.
Hmm.
Now you as the real estate,
Yes.
right? You're gonna suggest to the homeowner, you know what, maybe it'd be a good idea to try to do a property tax assessment appeal. Based on what I'm looking at, there's a very good chance you may be paying too much property taxes. I would call people because I got to know the formulas very well, so I would call people, maybe an expired listing, and they said, look, you're like the 25th person that called me. I said, yeah, but I'm calling you for a different reason. I think I can make your house more saleable. I think if we can lower your property tax assessment, which in turn lowers your property taxes, it's going to make your house more affordable to a lot more people. Would you agree with that? And that's how I did it. Okay.
It's a big deal. People makes the $2,000 a huge deal. I have a client. If it's more than $20,000, how much they love the house, they don't want to pay that cheaper because they're like, when I retire, that $2,000 is going to make a huge difference in my
But
tax. I don't wanna
now
do it.
once you learn these formulas and you look at what they're buying it at, I'm talking about in the normal markets. This has not been the normal market, but under a normal market, you can tell them, look, you're really being taxed based on this 100% of value. We're only paying here. So we may be able to get that lower just because it is an arm's length transaction, and that establishes new market value. So it's always good to keep that in mind, because once you gain that knowledge and you understand it, it's going to help you convince the homeowner that, hey, you may not be paying 20,000, you may only be paying 18. So, all right. So basically, again, you gotta take that 15% director's ratio into account. So you establish the 100% of value, multiply that number times 85%, and that will tell you where your comps have to be. Because if they're higher than that, according to what the state mandates, they don't have to lower your property tax assessment. Okay. All right. So again, with these calculations for tax appeals, in order to achieve a successful tax appeal, now I'm going for when the filing deadline will be April 1st, 2023. So anybody who's going to look to file their tax appeal next year, they can only use comparable sales from October 1st, 2021 through October 1st, 2022. They will not allow you to use something that closed on October 2nd. They're very strict that the comparable sales have to be within that time frame. And it would have to support a market value less than at 618,000. So we're going to use a little bit of a hypothetical case. The seller providing supporting evidence proving that the market value as of October 1st, 2021 through October 1st, 2022 was 618,375 compared to the current 100% assessed value, which was 727,500. Both the tax assessor and the tax board agree that you gave them such an ironclad case, they're going to probably make you an offer. That's usually what happens. You'll never have to go in front of the tax board.
I did.
Have you gone in front of the tax board?
When we
Yeah.
bought it, they negotiated with Fungus.
Right, okay. So now, have you filled out a tax appeal form before?
See, I was in a realtor, my realtor, when we bought the house, we
Right.
were not buying the house because the tax was higher, so she goes, I appealed them for you and they'll bring it down.
Right, see,
Wow.
there you
So-
go.
Then I had no idea, then we did it, so she put, I guess, strong case,
Right,
so they called us $1,500, so I said, no, it's okay, we're gonna go to court. Then they called us $2,000, and I said, it's okay, we're gonna come to the court. We're gonna fight for it, so we end up almost at $3,800 or $35 down. So, and then it hasn't been back to where it was yet.
How long ago? How long ago?
2013,
13 and it's still not back, so
No.
9 years,
yeah.
not
and
bad.
that's good, because
Yeah.
more than likely, everybody's taxes are going up every year.
Yeah.
But once you do an appeal, you're always gonna be lagging behind everybody else, which is a good thing.
Yeah.
So,
I have a question.
yeah,
So with these October hard and fast dates, it's okay, it's easy for us to get info from the MLS.
right.
But how does the town get it? Because the deeds are like recorded like a month later or something.
Well, you gotta remember, October, right? So they're not gonna let people start filing bills till after everybody gets that card that comes in the mail sometime in January.
Yeah,
So they have all the way up to April to look at their data.
oh, that makes sense, yeah, okay.
Okay. So when you're doing a tax appeal for this exercise, you gotta use reverse engineering, right? So now your comp supported a new 100% of value of 618,375. So now instead of dividing it by the equalization ratio, you gotta multiply it by the equalization ratio of the 48.18%. And now that equals the new assessed value of 297,900. The old assessed value is 350,500. So the new assessed value would be 297,900. So if you were successful in doing that, it also changes the property taxes from 19,327 to 16,825 annually. Or it saves the homeowner a little over 2,500 per year, or $208 a month. That's a substantial savings going forward. But the better news is that the buyer is the beneficiary of that as well, correct? Now, when I put this together, interest rates were 4.75%. I think those days are gone.
6.
A little higher now. But the savings the buyer gets from that $208 a month, this was based on a 4.75 mortgage. It would be equivalent to them borrowing $40,000 less than their mortgage, just by having that savings on the taxes. Anybody have any questions so far? I know it's a lot. It's very,
So
but
let's
it's
say,
not as difficult as I'm making it sound.
we're in Wayne,
I just try to confuse you.
so we're in Wayne, So I hear Florida, when the prices doubled up in Florida, so some of the towns in Florida, they kind of reassess the whole, so they.
But they gotta reassess, they gotta reevaluate the whole community.
So, they did, some of them they did, so what's the chances in Wayne, because the prices went up so high that they could reassess everything?
But you know, Florida is different, because when you buy in Florida, your taxes are based on your purchase price.
Okay,
In New Jersey, the taxes, go over to the new buyer. In Florida, you get reassessed.
but
So
then the
your
Wayne might,
person,
but Wayne might say, oh my God, everybody's prices paying too much money, it's benefit for me to get more taxes, let me just reassess the whole town.
Eventually the state will
Do they
mandate,
say that, like,
eventually the state will mandate when they feel that the town has to do a reval.
yeah,
And even when they do the reval, they usually go to 100%. You still have ample time in that process to challenge. They're saying your assessed value is here, because they will put you at 100%.
yeah,
You can challenge that and have a meeting with them saying, you guys are telling me my house is worth 800. Well, if I can get 800, I'm gone today. But really, based on these comps, I can only get 650.
yeah, people ask
So
me,
you
I
can
don't know the
challenge,
answer.
even though the town does a reevaluation, you have that right to challenge. And they'll send everybody a notification that they can't come in and challenge that.
yeah, I don't think Wayne's been done since probably the early 90s.
Long time.
Yeah,
Because a lot of people, a lot of my buyers, I don't know. like,
Hey,
they
Pat, if Wayne was smart, they would have got out there and did it last year.
I know, right? Yeah.
All right, so now the 8 easy steps to follow this whole process. You determine the home's market value as of that October 1st of the preceding pre-tax year. You calculate the home's 100% assessed value. That's the total value divided by the equalization ratio. That assessed value. You determine if the home exceeds the 15% of the New Jersey's director's ratio. That's 100% of the assessed value times 85% equals the judgment, or the amount they're going to base on. You're going to base on the new tax appeal. Try to find 5 comparable sales, no less than 3, using the apples to apples approach from that October 21st, October 1st, 2021 to October 1st, 2022. You then average the comps out to give you the new true value, then you reverse engineer it to find out what you need to put on the tax appeal form. And they're all going to be in the links that are provided. The comparable sales used should be no less than 200 to 500 square feet of the subject. And try not to use comparable sales less than the above recommendation of square feet, because you got to remember, the tax assessor is trying to disprove your case. So you have to look at the data that's going to help your client plus the data that's not going to. And you got to be honest, because if you're not, the tax assessor will embarrass you in front of the tax board. I know that's happened to me a few times. Okay. And then you fill out the tax appeal form online or hard copy, which is a very simple process to do. You have the petitioner or the homeowner sign it, date it, and check the appropriate, or deliver the appropriate check made out payable to wherever county you're going to. The Board of Taxation. You make 4 copies because the clerk has to get one, the assessor has to get one, the county has to get one, and I think that's pretty much it. And then the homeowner gets one. And then these are, what I usually do is I tell the homeowner, I give them specific instructions, go to the county first, then go to the township assessor, then go to the clerk, and let's see. And it's got to be done no later than April 1st. And then you just have your client retain his or her copy. And then these are all the helpful links. You got the online tax appeal form, a guide to the tax appeal hearings where they tell you what goes on. The New Jersey Association of County Tax Boards, where you can get all the tax rates for all the different municipalities. The New Jersey Table of Equalization valuations, and the New Jersey General Tax Rates by county and municipality. And that's pretty much it. Anybody have any questions? I must have done a wonderful job knowing that they quit. I know it's a lot. to take in. Huh?
It's gonna be posted somewhere, like,
No, we can
You,
post a PowerPoint somewhere, Christina, right?
And agent preview. Yes.
Facebook
thank
page.
you.
yeah, because we'll have all the formulas in there and it
And the cheat
basically
sheet,
clear
please.
across the state of New Jersey. So what's only going to change is the equalization ratio for each municipality that you're doing it. And it doesn't cost, I think it's $25 to file a tax appeal for properties that are assessed below 350,000. And maybe it's 50 for the higher end homes. So it's not a huge investment that people make. A lot of people hire companies to do this, but then they take a good portion of the
It's the first
savings up
year,
front.
right? Yeah.
I use it as a way, just another venue to get more business down the road, especially listings.
And the homeowner has to go. You can't go for the homeowner.
Even like, again, because we're not in normal market conditions, but when you start seeing a lot of for sale by owners, you can call them up and instead of saying, hey, I'm so-and-so, I want to, so you can say, look, I think I have a way to make your house more saleable.
Mm.
And here's how I think we can do that. Would you be interested? And then it's separating you or differentiating yourself from everybody else who's going after the list.
Yeah, like we're always asking for lists, asking,
Mhm.
give it to me, and it's like,
Yeah.
here's something for you, that can
Correct.
benefit you, and you're like, oh, that guy was so nice, he did this for us.
And they remember that.
Yeah.
So,
Great.
and you could use it with expireds as well. That's it. No questions on the board?
I do have one, when, let's say you have a buyer and they buy like a home right away, like, is there a certain time period that you can do this? Like, let's say if they buy a home that already had high taxes and you run the comps, like everybody in that same street is paying way less taxes than this home,
Right.
and there's homes that are similar to that. Is there like, a time frame when they buy that home to when they can make this appeal, or?
They want to do it probably within the first 30 days after they closed on it.
Okay,
Because the longer they let it go, you want to bring it to the tax assessor's attention as soon as you can.
So what's the bank appraisal has to do with this? Bank appraisal, like when you buy the house, you have an appraisal that is a lot less than what it actually assessed for.
Right.
So, because we just bought the house, let's say, in September, and in November, you get the tax appeal form to ship to your house.
But here's the problem.
What's the bank appraisal has to,
When you have a contract price, right? Let's say you have a contract price for $850,
okay,
but that house only appraised for $750, but the buyer waived the appraisal.
okay.
You're not gonna be able to, you can try, but the town's gonna say, well, the new value is you, on contract, you paid $850,000. You have an appraisal that's saying $750, then why did you pay $850?
Yeah, they don't care about that.
Okay, so the appraisal doesn't mean anything.
It can, but more than likely, they're gonna go based on the contract price because that appraisal was done solely for the buyer's partner, their lender.
The appraisal is only good for lending on the property. It's,
Yeah.
the bank is, the appraisal is telling the bank what it's worth in the open market.
Right, so when you have a contract, that's what the assessor is gonna go by with that contract price. Anybody else?
Anyone in the Zoom world have any questions?
I think I put them all to sleep.
They're all digesting.
It's
the
hard when you're
information.
talking numbers. It really
Fred is
is.
doing a manicure,
Huh?
Fred is doing a manicure.
At the beach, yeah.
On the beach.
From Sal, great job, Sam, thank you.
You're very welcome.
thank you, Tim.
Thanks, Tim.
But you can, all the formulas are in there. And then if anybody has any questions, let me know. I've done, I don't know how many of these. Everything, it never fails. I tell people, I don't want anything, and all of a sudden, bottle of this comes or bottle of that comes. No, no, like,
Then the list comes.
Yeah.
And then the list
exactly.
comes.
Thank you, Sam, thank you so much.
You're welcome.